It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
Post your open jobs at redballoon.work and use promo code Salem to get 10% off.
All right, it is 9:30, and it is a Tuesday morning. And this Tuesday, we've got this show once a month now with Nancy Harold from Sacred Fire Farms, Sacred Fire Living. And good morning, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's always a joy to come in and talk about my favorite subject, which is herbs.
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 So what besides herbs, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I kind of want to focus on herbs that can help us do a little stress busting for the holidays.
Okay, and we do want to make a mention here that if you do have a phone call or have a question, you can make a phone call 468-5101, and we'll put you on the air. You can ask Nancy about whatever it is you want to do. You can also send me a text message, and I'll relay that, 573-677-1001. So, all right, take it away. What do you got?
Well, this is the time of year. We're planning family gatherings, which can be kind of stressful.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. And it's not to say it's bad or we don't love our families, but I know just in our situation, because we both were married previously, my husband and I, our kids have 4 houses to visit. Oh, that alone,
sure,
makes a little for a little chaos. So I think people are becoming smarter. They're taking on less. They're doing some shopping online. They're trying to eliminate a lot of the external pressures, but there's still a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, especially when we're busy, we want to fall into bad habits. We overload on the sugar, we overload on the starches, we keep up the energy drinks, and all this stuff works against us. It just does. So I'm going to offer some alternatives.
So does it work in the short term? Like I don't drink energy drinks unless you consider Mountain Dew to be, and then I probably drink too much. But I mean, does it work for you in the short term? And do you pay for it later? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm as bad as anybody else because I admit to having a caffeine habit that I started when I was 12 and haven't found a way to give up yet. I love my coffee. I do an afternoon shot of coffee. But here's the deal. We need to balance that, find a way to balance that with some things that kind of help our bodies remain in tune. Now I'm going to beat that old drum of food, how sugar especially works against us. It might give us that temporary get up and go, but then you crash. And a lot of the sugar actually creates inflammation, which works on our mood, our energy levels. They found that inflammation is a source of depression a lot of times. So if you can just be aware, as tempting as it is, not to try to overload, and that's really hard in the holidays, it'll work for you. But there's some other things I want to point to, and as far as supplementation, and I'll get to herbs. We're building up here from the lowest to the highest. I think everybody, because our food source is so different from where it was 40 years ago when we had the minerals in the soils and before we did all this hybridization and GMO stuff, I think it's a really good idea to do a good B vitamin. And I'm going to beat the drum for that for a little while because actually B vitamins are very healthy to... you don't tend to overload on them. Our diet doesn't usually contain as much as they used to, and they're really good stress busters. We handle stress better if we have our B complex on board. And it's a full range of Bs that I prefer. Funny little thing, if some people say, well, Nancy, I don't know if I have enough B vitamins, or how would I know if I'm low? Here's a little fun thing you can do. Years ago, I had a provider tell me when I was complaining about mosquitoes. I'm like a mosquito. I was a mosquito magnet at the time. Bugs loved me. They just, I was their smorgasbord for whatever reason. And I would get bites all the time. And a provider told me, he says, that's a clue you're low on B vitamins. And he actually recommended something that's still in process of being made today called Cataplex B by Standard Process. It's not an ad for them as much as just its availability. You want to get a good quality B vitamin, and chiropractors, almost every chiropractor usually has an account with Standard Process. They can get that for you. And it just might be a low cost maintenance thing to do to get your bees up where they need to be. So I'll talk about that. A lot of times when people are feeling a little stressed, they want that chamomile tea. They want the, what's the other common? Lemon balm. People are becoming more aware of herbs, and especially herbs that kind of take down the tension, and that's great. I love that people are becoming more aware of what works. But there's a tendency, especially if you do pharmaceuticals for stress or anxiety, mood, that those, even something as mild as lemon balm, can interfere. So I like to point to another botanical that has an entirely different pathway of most of those herbs that we use for stress, the nervines. They affect our nerves. That's why they're called that. That is your oat straw and your chamomile and lemon balm. So one of my favorites to circumvent that reaction is something lavender. I love lavender. Lavender is very soothing. You can get it commercially prepared as a syrup, as a tea. There's Amazon. If you do Amazon, it has any number of choices, but so does your health food store probably. And lavender actually is unique as far as the research I've done, in that it uses an entirely different pathway from the pathway that has to be shared by the herbal botanicals and the pharmaceuticals. That's what gets you into trouble. And how they're processed in the pathways in the brain, they sometimes collide, creating what's known as a serotonin syndrome. And that's too much serotonin, and that makes you feel pretty crummy. kind of want to jump out of your skin and real edgy. And I've seen people go into serotonin syndrome, and they're just miserable until it subsides. So if you want to play it safe, if you're on some medicines already, lavender is my first go-to out of the gate. I can't find anything that causes problems mixing with lavender. Not yet anyway. And I've actually suggested to a lot of people who are on medicines, and they do quite well with it.
So, just as an aside here, I went to a lavender farm one time on Maui, and they have different kinds of lavender.
Uh-huh.
I mean, so I had no idea. We toured the different, patches of different kinds of some of them weren't in season. How could it not be in season in Hawaii? I don't know.
Things that make you go,
Yeah, but I don't know. But I just wonder, so is there a certain kind of lavender? Because they had names for it all, and and of course they had a list of products and things like that, and it was pretty interesting. But how do you know what kind of lavender? Does it matter?
I haven't found a differentiation between the different strains. I just haven't. And people use lavender quite a bit, like I said, who've been on pharmaceuticals. And now, that being said, anybody can react badly to anything, anytime. We're all as unique as our fingerprints. And so it may not even be a mix of the medicines, or you could be that 1 in 1,000 that does. But for the most part, I mean, there's actually 1% of the population, I think, that's allergic to Benadryl, which is what they get for allergies. So
True.
If you're that person.
I don't know that I have any allergies per se, but cilantro makes me sick.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because,
your own chemistry.
Most people, don't have any problem with cilantro. So.
Yeah. Cilantro actually is a detoxing herb. And there's an interesting effect if you're trying to detox the body. I'm not saying that's your case. You might really have something, but sometimes if you detox too fast, that will make you sick. So it's almost like, they call it a Herxheimer reaction, after the guy who discovered it was a thing. Yeah. And it actually makes you feel like you almost have the flu.
Yeah.
You just feel bad all over.
Yeah, for me it takes about 15 minutes, and then I know.
Nope, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
This is not for me.
Yeah.
So no cilantro for you.
No.
But so that's kind of an easy thing. And, we tend to think it's the nervous system that, causes us to run out of steam, or the other thing is to, amps us up. I think we can't ignore, treat it as just to focus on one thing. I think I like the systems approach, and I'm going to do a deeper dive into that with a class of herbs called adaptogens. adaptogens help balance our hormones and make everything play nice together in our body, which is a good thing. And they have less propensity to focus on one thing. They kind of do a systems-wide approach. So again, people are becoming more conscious, more aware, so they know about things like ashwagandha, they know about things like ginseng, they know about things like rhodiola. These are all pretty common adaptogens, and they all work in slightly different ways. But depending on where your focus needs to be, you might want to, I'm not advocating everybody to do a whole grocery store of adaptogens, but you might focus on one or two things that help balance a problem spot in the body. I like ashwagandha for the kidneys. There's some, and also the thyroid. There's some evidence that ashwagandha, in addition to having a calming, balancing effect, it actually helps rebuild the little filtering components in our kidneys. So if there's been kidney damage, it's good to help preserve and also help maybe kind of shore up some of the failing little filters within our kidneys that do the work. So that's one thing I like about ashwagandha. I'm a big fan of holy basil. That's another adaptogen for people who have the high cortisol stress response. People whose blood pressure tends to spike when they get stressed. That's usually a release of cortisol. People who are diabetic, it's within their interest to keep the cortisols down. So that's one thing I like holy basil for. Rhodiola is something else that's pretty common, and rhodiola has an interesting effect of having a little mood elevation that goes along with it. It just tends to shore up everything, but I think it must have an effect, and I can't find any research on this, but I'm just gleaning from the anecdotal reports I get that it has kind of a little neurotransmitter effect that helps that function better. So these are things actually, if you wanted to research and start now, I mean, they not only carry you through the holidays, but they just, life is stressful. So, and it seems like it's increasingly more so every day. But, I blame some of the social media for that. So the other one that I like is reishi, which is actually a type of mushroom. People know I have found some reishi growing in my garden. That was just so exciting to find that little mushroom there. Things that make me happy,
So how does it get there?
Sometimes bird droppings, yeah. It needs usually a dead tree to feed it, support it. A lot of our mushrooms do. Reishi actually has gotten a lot of notoriety for helping to shrink tumors in cancers. And it actually helps the immune system, shores that up a little bit. Schisandra is another one I don't use a lot, but a lot of people report it's great for endurance, so to help keep you like the Energizer Bunny and running strong. So the adaptogens are a great course, and what they do is they go systemically into the body, and they kind of go towards the problem areas, and they work on that. But when you're talking systemically, I want to look at not just nerves and the nervous system response, but also what goes on with our muscles, because that can have quite a bearing on how we feel and perceive and work. If anybody's ever strained their back, lifting the garden wheelbarrow or whatever, knows about how muscles will alter their performance significantly.
Oh, yeah.
I worked for a chiropractor, and he was a big proponent of magnesium. And so I thought, I'll try some magnesium. I'm pretty active out in the garden. I'll do that. And what I found is one type of magnesium by itself really doesn't do the trick. I mean, some people benefit from the Epsom salts baths, which are magnesium based, but some people it does nothing for. If I advocate for magnesium, I found it much more useful for myself and my family if we do a magnesium complex. So when you talk about those many types, this is the case where it does matter. So a lot of people know magnesium citrate for if you have the tendency towards constipation. Magnesium sulfate has gotten attention for helping with chronic lung disease like emphysema. There's many magnesium taurate. There's several magnesiums, and I don't again, I'm not saying one certain complex. Different complexes have different blends, and it might be a little bit of trial and error. But most people I know benefit from doing the magnesium complex, which has at least 4 different kinds, versus doing a single type of magnesium. They get a broader spectrum. What magnesium does for us is it helps us sleep better overall, helps our muscles heal and perform better, helps vitamin D be absorbed, from what I understand, D3, the good vitamin D we all need to keep healthy. So I have added magnesium complex to my self-care as part of that. And it just seems to work. If you're looking at the muscles, we carry a lot of tension in our bodies. I get monthly chiro care, so he's always saying, "Oh, I can tell that you're at the computer working too much." So yeah, the magnesium in our muscles is important. There's some of these adaptogenic herbs that you can access very easily through commercial products that work on the muscles. And one I forgot to talk about, was Eleuthero. Eleuthero is the scientific name for it, and it used to be referred to as Siberian ginseng. So they found out it's not really ginseng at all. But here's the funny thing. Eleuthero is the main ingredient in a commercial product called tension tamer tea. And when I was working with a chiropractor, a lot of his clients would, use Eleuthero, and they said it worked like a natural muscle relaxant for them. Well, if we have something to help us relax and unwind, then that Eleuthero can be nice if you are subject to the neck strain that I get when I'm on the computer too much. It just kind of helps our body unwind. It has some other things, the commercial tea in it, but it was funny when somebody said, "Oh, I know of that because that's in my tension tamer tea." It's the first ingredient. I went, "What?" So that's an easy one to access. I just think that there are so many things. Self-care cannot be. We want to ignore it, and no more so than at the holidays, when we're worried about everybody else having a nice Christmas, a nice Thanksgiving, and then we're called upon to really look at what we can do to ease that. Since we have time, I wasn't sure how much time we would have. If I could get into the nervines a little bit, that's another class of herbs. Oat straw, oat straw tea. We use a lot in the house to kind of after a hard day's work or something where you've had to focus on a lot, because it nourishes, it shores up the nerves themselves. And that's not a bad thing to have. Skullcap is another one commonly used. Skullcap is one I do advise some caution with if you're on the pharmaceuticals. Certainly fine if you're not, but with the pharmaceuticals it can have that serotonin reaction. Some people say it makes them sleepy if they take it in the daytime, so it usually is taken at nighttime to help rest. But skullcap is a nervine that is interesting in its effect that it seems to shut down, I call the hamster wheel of the brain. That thing you want to turn over and over and over again in your mind. You just can't wind down because you're recycling the same problem. I think it's like somebody comes along and puts a stick in the proverbial bicycle wheel, and it's just like, okay, I know I was worried about that, but I don't feel the same worry now. So it doesn't necessarily it doesn't cause you to have amnesia, but it just kind of puts it in perspective. So
Okay.
that we have that. Trying to think of some other helpful nervines. Oh, let's see. Lemon balm. I like lemon balm. Some people really respond well to lemon balm. I'm not one of them. I think that it just doesn't do a lot for me. I kind of need more of the heavy hitters. Too much herbal, what I want to say, use, I guess, causes a tolerance. I don't know. Lemon balm just doesn't do that much for me. Valerian is something that people know. The valerian's a very powerful nervine. Tends to help with sleep. So people who are, I guess, chronic insomniacs tend to benefit from the valerian. I was doing a talk.
Don't they have a commercial product that's named something like that, Valerian or
Yeah.
something like that?
Yeah.
to help you sleep or
They
something.
may well have. I mean, all of these things can be found in some level in commercial products, and that's why, if you're going to look at adding any, even if you're not on pharmaceutical medicine, if you're doing complexes, read your labels and really find out what's in there, because you don't want to get too much of a lot of these nervines.
So I guess melatonin is the one that they promote a lot. And
Yeah.
so what is that? I mean, is that a
It's a chemical made by our bodies, but sometimes it's the argument is we don't make enough, or again, it's we don't have the building blocks from our food to make it internally. And I'm not a huge fan of melatonin. I think people get a little dependent on it. That's my opinion. I've heard pros and cons, but it seems like there's more cons than really pros. But if it works for you, I don't judge. you know.
yeah?
Like I said, we're all as unique as our fingerprints. So, yeah, melatonin really is, in my opinion, a bit overrated. You're talking about sleep. Good sleep hygiene goes a long way, and that's, not falling asleep to the TV, which many of us do. Sometimes I say my TV watches me.
Well, I fall asleep to the TV because I go to bed really early. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And my wife's still up watching TV when I.
Oh yeah,
when
so you've learned to tune it out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't have trouble sleeping. I just close my eyes and that's it.
There you go. You're gone.
Yeah.
Well, we're not all that lucky,
Yeah.
Sam.
Well.
Yeah. So, just really be aware of what are in the supplements that you're already taking, so you don't double up, get too much. I mean, the adaptogens tend to play nice with most pharmaceuticals, but you can even have a response where those adaptogens kind of, create problems with the serotonin syndrome, and I tell people it's just a better thing to avoid. So let's see what I have not covered here. Covered a lot. Okay, so homeopathy. I want to just touch on homeopathy real briefly because homeopathy is sourced from herbs, but it's created a little bit differently, and there's a lot of homeopathic blends. Highlands has received a lot of attention as a homeopathic supplier. A little bit about homeopathy and how it works. A gentleman 250 years ago, thereabouts, decided that he didn't want to be a doctor anymore after he worked so hard to do it. Dr. Hahnemann is considered the father of homeopathy because we were just doing terrible things to people. They were using, mercury and leeches and things like that. And he was quoted as saying something akin to, "I just can't do that to my fellow human being." So he actually, he had a gift for languages, and he started since he did have the medical basis, he started translating medical texts worldwide. And what he found is that there were doctors experimenting with some of these things as very, very well diluted substances. So actually mercury was diluted. And what they would find is it take out the hazard while keeping some of the benefit that it was believed to have. And he found an interesting thing that nobody can explain. The more diluted it got, the stronger it got. The more benefit was received from it and the fewer side effects. And he diluted it out to the point where there was almost none of the original substance in it. And homeopathy was born. That's kind of a simplified, homeopathy for dummies, which I think I'm still trying to get my arms around. But some good homeopathic things that I like is one called Kali-Phos, Kaliphos. Kali-Phos is, there's saying that phosphorus is to the nervous system what magnesium is to the muscles. But we can't ingest phosphorus, of course. But the homeopathic version of Kali-Phos gets the necessary nutrients that phosphorus would provide within our bodies naturally, and helps improve concentration, helps improve memory. So that's just kind of a good, and takes our tension down. I keep looking at the clock because I could go on and on and on. So you're just going to have to give me the wrap-up sign here when we get close, because I don't want to go past my time. The other one I really like is something for just generalized anxiety. And this is something I'm finding post-COVID. People are coming to me and telling me they have more than ever before. I think a lot of us, there were so many changes we went through post-COVID, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, social distancing doesn't work.
I had a story this morning about brain fog.
Yeah. And I think that contributes to our anxiety, because what happens when we get brain fog is our neurotransmitters are not working like they should. And actually, one of the homeopathic blends that I like for just what they call generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, can't believe it's got its own acronym now. Maybe it did before, but I'm hearing it everywhere, is arsenicum album, which is actually arsenic, derived from arsenic. But again, that very, very, very diluted form. And I think it's kind of interesting that when you're dealing with generalized anxiety, it almost is like a toxin. It almost is like something got into my system and I just can't get rid of it. So we treat it with arsenica album. When you're looking at homeopathy, I think, a lot of people don't know about doses or dosages, where to begin. Pretty much a 30C to a 200C preparation is considered moderate. So that might be a good place to start. 30C, I know some people take 5 or 6 times a day. They're just little pop pellets that dissolve under your tongue. Mm-hmm. And they'll use a 200C prep for maybe 3 to 4 times a day. It's stronger. So the 30 versus 200 just refers to the amount of dilutions or, percussions it's received to how it's been diluted. So higher numbers tend to mean more. When I was studying homeopathy, I had come across a piece of information that said X, there you'll find X preps and C preps to be most common. X is a lower dilution than C overall. You get C kind of cross the line. But the difference between an X preparation and a C preparation, this is probably way more information than anybody wants. I told you, wind me up. Get me going. I've heard X are more for physical things. So a lot of people do arnica in a form of homeopathy. They'll do a 30X for that muscle strain, that, overwork strain for pain. And then they'll do a C prep for things that have maybe an emotional or spiritual or mental component along with the physical. So that's why I look at things when I'm talking about homeopathy. I'll usually go to my C preparations for that. But some people, like me, inquiring minds want to know. And so I offer it out there as a bit of information. I want to talk a little bit about our classes, because we have one coming up. One I'm especially excited about is the tissue class we're going to have on November 19th. One of my favorite people and an herbal mentor, Colleen Rabbit-Smith, is going to come out and teach us how to read the body to know if we're in trouble. She did a deep dive study into especially what the tongue can tell us. There are whole practices based on what our eyes, the color showing up in our iris as well as our tongue. She's going to focus on the tongue and the skin, what the character of our skin can tell us. So we're actually going to get some hands-on. We'll be studying our own tongue in the mirror. And that helps us then choose what sorts of herbs we can use to do that. So
when is that coming up?
November 19th from 1 to 3. It's on our website. You can actually register for the course there.
How do people get to your website?
It is www.sacredfireliving.com. And it's a whole bunch of information about us.
And you can get there from your Facebook page too, right?
Yeah. We advertise a lot of our courses on Facebook. So look for Sacred Fire Farms.
So right now, are there still herbs that are in your garden, or is it? I mean, I know we're in November and it's still warm.
Yeah, the only thing that's hanging on my garden is my spinach and a little bit of lettuce, and I think the groundhog is making that his own personal salad bar. But what can you do?
Yeah.
Got to feed nature too.
So when do you start planting herbs again?
I will actually start some in the greenhouse in January and February.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do a plant sale where we, on the farm, we'll have news coming up when that gets close, and seed swap beforehand. Usually do a seed swap in February and a plant sale in March.
All right.
Yeah.
And if people are interested in, so when you say sale, you sell the raw herbs, or do you?
We actually sell little plant starts.
Okay.
Of herbs and also some vegetables that I like. I stick primarily with heirlooms. I just kind of traditionalist that way. But heirlooms are making a kind of a comeback. There's a school of thought that the hybrids lose some of although they're easier to grow, they lose some of their nutritional good stuff. So I'm I'm kind of a purist at heart when it comes to my food.
And then you guys, you said you have weddings and things out there.
Yeah,
too, so-
we actually do events, barn dances. Our next one will be in the spring. We did weddings for groups of 50 or less, and we're currently being considered for a site of an independent film.
Oh, wow. All right.
So there you go.
All right, Nancy, thank you for coming in. We'll talk to you again next month.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you for having me.
All right, Nancy Harold, Sacred Fire Farms, Sacred Fire Living. We are AM 1560 KTUI Sullivan. You can pick us up on YouTube and the TuneIn app. It is 10 o'clock and time now for the news.
USA News, I'm Corey Myers. Donald Trump Jr. testified once more in the civil fraud trial involving the Trump Organization in New York. Speaking on behalf of the defense, he attributed charges against his father to an overzealous attorney general.
It doesn't feel like